Hello and welcome to Retro Reviews, my channel where I review my favorite retro video games of all time, as well as some modern releases I have recently finished. The retro title that I want to look at today is the Battletoads arcade game. This is another one included in Rare Replay. If you didn't know, I'm making a goal to fully complete every game on the Rare Replay collection, get every single achievement on it, and this one was a ton of fun. However, this is one of the hardest arcade-style games I have ever played. Probably because it's a Battletoads game, let's be honest here. Battletoads games are notorious for being incredibly difficult, but this kind of marries the difficulty from Battletoads games with the difficulty of standard arcade games, at least the classic ones back in the day. If you don't know what Battletoads is, it's an old game made by Rare, where you play as one of 3 Toads, and you can just beat up everybody on the way to the bosses for each level. Standard beat 'em up style type game. They have some funny properties. When if you get close to people or you're dashing forward, they can get a football helmet when they all of a sudden appears over their head and bashes them in, or they get big spikes coming out. It's hilarious the way that they do things. You just look like a normal Toad, and then all of a sudden they're pulling out an anvil or a big spike claw or a buzz saw on their foot. It's pretty ridiculous and funny and weird, and it's exactly the kind of game that I enjoy. Now, the Battletoads arcade game I had actually never heard of. I'd played the original Battletoads game. I had played Battletoads and Double Dragon on the SNES. But this one was something new to me. I'd never heard of it before, so I tried it out, and it was super punishing. Fortunately, the Rare Replay has the ability to rewind, because this game is really punishing in a lot of ways, not just because it is an arcade game that wants to have you deplete all your coins as much as possible. It's definitely that style for sure, but some of the hitboxes don't work sometimes, or sometimes it seems like you're on the same plane as one of the other enemies that you're attacking, and they're hitting you and you can't hit them. Sometimes, the bosses especially, will have really huge hitboxes and very small hurt boxes, or they recover from your hits. Sometimes if you do one of the special properties like I talked about earlier, where they turn into a giant anvil or whatever, you do one of your smash attack hits into them, dash into them and hit them, they'll recover instantly, and while you're in end lag, they'll smash you or hit you. So there's a lot of times where it feels like this game punishes you for making the correct choice, and that's my biggest gripe here. For an arcade game, I understand the difficulty needs to be there, but it's just too artificially difficult in some aspects, and that's what I don't like about it. I don't mind a really hard game, but I do mind when a game feels like it is truly impossible to beat. Now, I'm not saying that this game is impossible. I remember I texted my brother after I beat this. I'm like, I feel like this game might be impossible. I have since beat it a couple extra times, because one of the achievements is playing through the entire game with each Toad. I think you can probably get this if you just had 3 controllers and you pair them all, put them all in at the very end, and then get the achievement. I think that'd probably work, but I don't have an extra controller, so I just played it through 3 different times and had a good time all 3 times. And I got better each time. I got better at exploiting weaknesses and such, but the rewind feature was still very essential for me in all 3 playthroughs of this game, because sometimes it just feels like you are trapped. There's nothing you can do to avoid taking a ton of damage. And if any enemies start piling on you, you can lose half a health bar in a matter of seconds, and it's really difficult to recover from that. You have very few spots during each level to recover health. I think there's probably 2 on each level, where some flies will pop on screen. You have to get them before they fly off, and they'll recover a certain amount of health. You can only get full health if you've only lost a few hits. It's just really difficult to preserve your health, preserve your lives. I believe you have at least 3 continues. I've never gone past that. They do give a generous amount of continues here, which is very, very nice. You will absolutely need them for this game. But there's just a lot of times where damage seems completely unavoidable and there's nothing you can do about it. And that's a bit of a shame. I like games where you can figure out the system, exploit that system, and win, prevail. I like going against these old games and trying not to use save states, trying not to use the rewind feature, because I know it's more rewarding if I just beat it straight up. So I like to see and challenge myself, see if I can do it. The second and third playthroughs of this game, I tried that. I tried really hard to not use the replays, the rewind feature. I tried to just remember where all the enemies were going to be spawning, what the sequence was, how to exploit the boss fights. The boss fights are very exploitable. One of them that I struggled really early on with is this giant snake that pops in from the background and just chomp onto the screen in front of you, and then you can hit him. And it takes a lot of hits to end up killing this giant snake thing. And he starts getting faster and faster, and it's really hard to avoid. But once you learn the patterns of how to avoid, and recognizing where they're likely to chomp down, you'll probably only get hit hit once or twice at the most. Twice can take an entire life away from you, but if you're smart about the patterns and recognizing, you can get away with this without losing a life, which I did on my final playthrough. Same thing with some of the other bosses. There's a giant rat boss at the end of, I think, the second to last level that grows huge after doing his normal form. You hit him a few times. That in itself is kind of hard. You can't get super close to him, otherwise he ranges you. His hitboxes have priority. But if you get the timing right, the spacing right, you can attack him, get him into this giant form, and then he jumps and smashes you if he gets too close. If you just dash right, dash left, right back and forth during all of his jumping animations, then when he pauses, you hit him. Once you figure out the patterns, it works really, really well. I can't say the same thing about all the enemies in the game, though. There are some times where you'll have some really difficult enemies that you can exploit one of them at a time, but other times you'll get two. There's this really big werewolf-looking guy that I really love fighting these guys. It's hilarious. If you like dash into them and do an attack, and then you get close enough to them, you grab them and you just punch them right in the crotch several times. It's hilarious, and they make this like stunned face. It's really funny. This game is fairly crude. I mean, it is a Battletoads game. It's fairly crude, but the humor is quite funny. I think it's very enjoyable. I think overall it's the rare style of humor for sure. But if you get two of those guys on screen at once, if you get them into that animation where you're punching them, you have to finish it off with a final punch. And if another one grabs you during that, you not only lose like the knockdown on the one guy, but now all of a sudden you're in between two of them and they can kill you almost instantaneously. It's pretty ridiculous, and it's really hard to figure out any kind of way to exploit both of them on screen at a time. Again, the rewind feature was imperative. I felt like I needed it for certain spots like this. Otherwise, you just lose lives like crazy. You can go from like a really great run to 0 lives and continuing all in a singular level. It's just crazy. The boss fights, I think, are the best part of this game. Overall, I think like the enemies themselves are pretty varied. I like some of the areas. There's one where like giant balls will come in from the background, rolling toward you. There's actually two different phases of these. The green ones are slower and you get to see their pattern ahead of time. Second time you get to them, they're blue and they like bounce and roll much faster. I like stuff like that. That's really fun to avoid. I like the enemy variety. They do a lot of cool things. Some of them have like big giant maces. Some of them have guns they can shoot you with. You have to make sure you're avoiding those. You have other things like you can pick up weapons on the ground, big like giant clubs that you can smash people with, and you have invincibility during those like attacks themselves. There is a lot of variety in the gameplay, but I think the bosses shine the most. The one I liked the least is this like giant mechanical rat. Once you break it down, after a while it becomes like a rat in like essentially on big stilts, and then you get it down to its final form and it's jumping and hitting you. This is what I talked about earlier, where if you hit the rat and you are in end lag, it'll bounce back almost immediately and be able to squash you and take off like 3 or 4 points of your health, which is super detrimental. So using the rewind feature or like exploiting your iframes and trying to just space yourself perfectly is imperative for that final form. Otherwise, the fight is pretty unremarkable. The other fights are fantastic. The rat, like I talked about earlier, I think he's in some of the other games as well. If I'm not mistaken, probably all of them are. I haven't played the old Battletoads game or Battletoads and Double Dragon in quite a while, but this one I recognize from Double Dragon for sure. You can like exploit his small form. If you like go far enough away, he'll roll and try and like attack you that way. You jump over him, time it just right, and you can do a big like dash attack into him, run away, rinse and repeat until he grows huge, and then do the pattern like I talked about earlier. That boss is extremely fun. Really hard the first time around. After I learned it, it was much more fun. The final boss is fantastic. The entire sequence is an on-rail sequence, but you can move around on the ship itself. And then to like aim while you're shooting, you have to be shooting, and then you can like aim 360 around you. You can get power-ups during that sequence to get like multi-shot or fire or lasers. You have a couple of times where you can do like a big burst of attacks that spins all the way around you and makes you invulnerable for a moment. But when you get to the final boss, it's this giant guy shooting at you from corners of the screen, and then it'll transition into him at the bottom of the screen shooting up at you. It's just a really inventive fight. I really liked it. It was really hard, very bullet hellish, and it was a ton of fun. They do a really good job with the boss fights, and honestly, the level design itself is pretty good overall as well. Just some of the enemies can be really annoying. There's so much about this game that feels like if they just tweak the difficulty down a little bit, this game would be much more enjoyable. It'd be a much better experience overall. But as it stands, it's still very fun. It's still a really hard, punishing Battletoads experience. And if you haven't played it and you have Rare Replay, this is one you should definitely try. If you've played the original one, this one's worth your while. It's much bloodier. It's like, it's very crude, like I said before, but it's very, very fun. It's a really cool experience. I liked playing as all the Toads. They have unique animations. They do different like voice lines and everything. I quite like this game for what it is. Again, if you have Rare Replay, go check this out. If you have it on emulator, I think it's worth a try. I'm going to be giving the Battletoads arcade game in between a silver and a gold rank. I think if the difficulty was tweaked down a little bit, this would be a gold rank for sure. It is classic beat 'em up, classic arcade games at their finest, but just a little bit too difficult at times. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.